Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Sunny, and we have PIYUSH with us.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So interesting topic, actually. While I was reading it, it says overcoming skill shortages, acquiring experienced fresher. So oxymoron, experienced fresher. Can you tell me something about it?
So I think most of us from the industry here would actually relate to this oxymoron. As in, we practice it, but we don't sort of realize that we are practicing it because most of our entry-level roles, we always tend to get this requirement from business that 1 year, so we rarely get those absolute fresher requirements, and that's primarily because there are a lot of skills which we believe that a student or a fresher would gain at least from 6 to 9 months of experience. And therefore, we always shy from, recruiting freshers into our entry-level roles. So we'd rather go for young laterals. So that's one of the key concerns. It primarily stems from the fact, not only from hard skills, but also there are things such as attitude, diligence, which are often found lacking in freshers. And that's primarily because they don't get exposure to any sort of corporate industry. So our thesis is that the education should be infused with such experiences, such application-based content, as well as such projects and integrations from the industry, so that the outcome of education should be an experienced fresher. So you're right in calling it that it's an oxymoron, but that's what we mean, that the education, specifically the more professional educations like the BCAs, BBAs, MBAs, BTechs of the world, they should be more around more exposure to the industry so that when there are students graduating out, they should be productive from day one. So that's what we mean by experienced freshers.
So if you can tell me something about maybe some of the challenges which you think organizations are facing in the respect of talent.
So I think one of the major challenges which we get is that there are, if we really look at this, the whole spectrum of when we look at hiring talent at entry level, there are institutes, areas, pockets which belong to the top 10% of the segment. If I can take MBA as an example, right from the IIMs to the MDIs to the FORCE, the TAPMIs, the MITs, the Christ. Now, we might have a certain tiering system in mind, but you have to realize that all of these institutes combined, they are taking care of just 10% of the MBA graduates which this country is churning out. There is a lot of lack of standardization which is there, and which is where when the organizations are looking at recruiting fresh talent, because there is a lack of resources and they are not able to deliver quality education experience, I think that is where the organizations face challenge when they go to the mass segment of entry-level talent. So that is where we need to bring in more systems. We need to have role of technology has got to play up. Can we measure skills in some way? Also, all those things need to come up. And it's also upon the industry to come in as well.
And what exactly can the stakeholders do in terms of working together to kind of re-innovate the education in terms of getting the future-ready workforce?
So I think it's also unfair for us to expect the education system to adapt. We all must admit that the breakneck speed at which things are changing is it's just unfair for the education system to adapt. It's a mammoth animal which takes its own time to turn and churn new curriculums and everything. So therefore, there has to be effort from private players, from industry, to make sure that they are getting integrated into the education system, so that so let's say, for example, if I can take one of the job profiles of an entry-level job role, let's say a bank has a branch operations role, and if I can plug that in as a specialization in a program, so that that is how the industry is collaboratively working with the academia. And therefore, it's a win-win scenario because the employability quotient goes up while industry gets talent which is trained on the skills which are required on the job. So those are the things where the industry should step in. Also, I think a lot of private companies can actually work outside the traditional institutes to give education which can be measured, which is very outcome oriented and new age. And I think with tech making advancements in leaps and bounds, this is so much more possible in today's age. So those are the two things where I feel that the industry should be focusing a lot on integrating with the most freshest pipeline for them, and a lot of private companies should actually look at how they can contribute into the system.
Sounds quite interesting, Piyush. But then, if you can tell me how Sunstone can, bridge that gap or solve this issue.
So we work with a lot of already existing colleges and private universities, and we power the soft skills as well as the industry-ready skills for them. So for example, if we take example of a program, let's say a BBA or an MBA, so while business studies, marketing, operations, these traditional theory skills can come from the institute because they are best at it. However, how do I use the concepts of operations into logistics and supply chain? Because that's something which is evolving at a rapid pace. So that is where we partner with the industry, bring in their expertise into what is required, and have a regular refreshers on it so that what they are studying is something which is required. We get the job roles integrated into the curriculum. So if I'm taking the same example, if a logistics manager job profile can be integrated as one of the electives in the operations specialization. So imagine the kind of talent, how relevant would it be for a job role such as a logistics manager. So these are the things where we come in. Secondly, these are the hard technical skills. When we look at people-facing roles, there are a lot of soft skills which become very important. How good am I at negotiation? How good am I at critical thinking? How good is my attitude? I'm going even further, intangible sort of skills. So you got to find a way to move the needle on that and be able to measure it. So that is where technology comes in, and that is where we partner with these institutes and make sure that we are providing both these industry-ready skills as well as these soft skills which are required for the industry. And then at one end, we partner with a lot of corporates. On the other hand, we have a lot of students, 10,000s of students. And industry get to choose from a very, very wide variety of pool. So that is how it becomes like a one-stop solution as well for the industry as well, for a relevant industry-ready talent.
And listening to you, Piyush, one thing comes to my mind, that how Sunstone knows about those gaps, and what was the work done behind at the back end to understand what are these real gaps which we are taking care of.
Yeah. So I think there are three primary stakeholders in this whole equation. There is the industry, which is like a major stakeholder who has to absorb the talent. Then there are the education institutes, and of course the student, or the talent for the industry. Now, if you really look at this equation, and I'm not talking about those top 10%, I'm talking about the mass 90% of the segment, it's caught in a vicious cycle. As a country, we operate at very, very poor fill rates when it comes to education. We have 6 lakh seats in MBA. There are only 3 lakh students who take admission. We have 17 lakh seats in engineering. Only 8 lakh students take admission. So we operate at 50% occupancy. And if you remove the top 10%, it's even lower. At the same time, if you look at the employability, the kind of skilling which they get. Because these guys are not having enough fill rates, they don't invest enough in the quality of education. And it's just the base hygiene which is getting covered. They'll make sure that you'll have someone in the class teaching you business studies. But what is being taught, is it relevant? How engaging is it? There's no one actually looking at that. There's no one actually measuring that. It's a black box. Now, therefore, the students is not skilled enough. Therefore, the corporates is not able to absorb that talent. And hence, if you look at the placement numbers for this mass segment, they are 30, 35% at an aggregate level. So this is caught in a vicious cycle. And therefore, there needs to be a approach, and as the theme says, fresh eyes. There needs to be a fresh approach wherein you can solve for all these three stakeholders if you can have a industry-ready, relevant content and specifically tailored to the job roles which the corporate is ready to accept, which is the current need of the system. Then the students becomes employable. The campuses start attracting more students, and that then becomes like a virtuous cycle. So that's the philosophy and the thesis of Sunstone.
Makes a lot of sense. In the context of fresher hiring, if I may ask, that what is that one thing that the leaders should start doing, and that one thing which they should stop doing?
Yeah. So I think that we have a lot of bias when it comes to fresher hiring. And as I started this chat with that, often the business gives us the requirement that, thoda sa experience la do, and so that sort of thing. So I think if we can remove that bias and have it evaluated on the skills rather than that tag, is something which, and I request this at almost each forum. So that is something which I would say that the industry should start looking at. I understand that the efficiencies and where they come from, but at the same time, there are a lot of organizations doing lots of good work to make sure that the freshers are employable, are experienced. So I think we need to look at right places, but at the same time, because you need, if we integrate early on, it's only going to help our talent pipeline as well. So that is something which I think the leaders should look at fresher hiring.
A lot of us in this room will agree with me that we want freshers to start delivering, start from the day one. So what could be some of the strategies which can be developed to overcome these challenges?
So I think it's very interesting if you really look at what is a fresher before the fresher becomes a fresher. The fresher is part of an education program where he or she is actually a captive learner for 2 to 3 years, or in some cases even 4 years. Isn't that a gold mine if you really think of it from that perspective? You have a learner who is captive for you with 3 years. So imagine the things which you can integrate into the education system. So I think if we really look at it from that lens, it will give you a whole new perspective, and you can get them trained on skills which you require, which is required for job role at your place. So that is that's the gold mine I'm talking about. It's 3 years of captive learning time, and I'm sure you would really appreciate this, Sunny.
One last question from my side. How important do you think is the industry-academia relationship, especially with respect to the entry-level recruitment landscape?
Yeah. So I think with the role of tech now increasing in almost every sphere, the industry-academia relationship becomes even more relevant, because now you can have a lot of measurability to the skills as well. For example, let's say I talked something very intangible as good attitude. Because you have that learner captive for 2 to 3 years, there are so many data points that learner is actually contributing into the system, if you capture it right, that you can actually even have a measured scale on good attitude. I'm taking an extreme example. Of course, now you can translate it to digital marketing and logistics and other things. But that's the kind of output which we can draw if industry is integrated at right places at the right time. And it is also not fair for us to expect the education system to react to the changes so fast. There is a whole process which goes into this. There is a whole system which runs behind setting up various curriculum. A lot of colleges are affiliated to, some universities, and so I think it has to be a top-up sort of a thing which has to come in, and which is where industry needs to integrate at the right point, and they have to be open towards it and rather advocating for it. So I think if that is something which goes on, then we will have a lot of great fresh talent.
Thanks. So any questions with respect to fresher hiring from the audience, if at all?
Do you know of such initiatives or where corporates can actually contribute and we can get better freshers?
So, Preeti, the things which you talked of are slightly, of course, they are very helpful to the students in giving some perspective, but they're at slightly more superficial level or at best transactional. What I am talking of is a slightly more deeper engagement here with the industry, between industry and academia. And this is with respect to that, let's say you have a hiring requirement, right? And you have a visibility on it that, let's say January 23, I would need 50 entry-level talent on this particular role. Why can't you go to someone where there is a large pool, you get to pre-hire those candidates, you get to train them on the content, on the things on which matter to your job profile, and then you get, let's say, a offer on them. Out of those 50, you end up selecting, let's say, 35. So that, I'm just taking one example. There can be many other such arrangements which are possible. So that is the sort of deeper engagement which I am advocating when I talk of industry-academia collaboration. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, PIYUSH.